listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a podcast where we explore what it's like getting older, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. In this season of Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, we're covering topics related to vibrant aging. I'm your host, Cheryl Praska. Let's grow old together. Today on Honestly Aging, I'm delighted to welcome Claudia Apfelbaum, a licensed clinical social worker and founder of Claudia Listens. Claudia specializes in helping people strengthen communication, understand their relationship patterns, and build meaningful connection at every stage of life. She brings decades of experience supporting individuals and older adults through life transitions, loneliness, caregiving, and the challenges that shape how we relate to one another. Today, she's here to help explore how friendship evolves as we age and how we can cultivate deeper, more supportive relationships in our later years. Claudia, welcome and thank you for being here with me. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Same here. So, Claudia, you have spent decades helping people improve communication and relationships. How do you define friendship at this stage of life, and how has that definition evolved as you've aged?
Hmm. Well, let me say that I think friendship is one of the most important, even you could say invaluable elements of being a person, whether you're a little person, a 4, 3, 5-year-old person, or an 80 or 90-year-old person. I think friendships really give us almost like a reason to be and a reason for sure. And they absolutely provide us some of the emotional juice that we need to stay happy and invested in our own lives. Um, I think they do change over time. I mean, when we're kids, we can be very active and jumping around and playing. When we are older, I would say a lot of our friendship is about talking and sharing and maybe reflecting or sitting together and doing something side by side. Um, so, yeah, because our own energy changes and shifts over time, our ability to our ability to engage changes. The way we relate changes.
I just
Okay.
want to reflect on one thing that you've said, and it
Okay.
is whenever I have like a good phone call or a good get together with a friend or a couple of friends, or even like, for example, I just had a get together with a group of ladies from the neighborhood where I live. I left so energized and just feeling so good that I was able to make that connection. So I think that like everything you're saying, I have experienced.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yes, I myself am uh, in having an incredible friendship, new friendship. It's a year and a half old with actually two women who are friends, and they're in a relationship, but I'm their third friend.
Yeah.
And we have the best time together almost every week, laughing, going out to dinner, going to a play, going to a ballet, talking on the phone. It just makes me feel so joyful. And so it actually is like it's an affirmation of my own thoughts. Like friendships are invaluable. And for many older people who are single, either through divorce or widowhood, having friends really is like a link to life energy, you could say.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
So the question that I asked, and I'll
Yes.
pose it as if you have anything to add, how do you define friendship at this stage of your life? And how has that definition evolved as you've
Hmm.
aged?
I would say, as I've already said, that it is the an incredibly important element to making our lives good or not so good. I mean,
Mm,
so many older people suffer from loneliness and isolation. and having even one friend, although that is kind of the minimum, obviously one friend, but having social connections is such a bulwark against these feelings of loneliness and isolation. I think friendship is essential to one's well-being, to people's well-being. And, some people feel kind of hopeless about friends, finding friends and making friends at an older age. And given partially my own experience, I don't feel it's at all hopeless. I think one can find, I think the biggest element is going out into the community somehow, some way, from going to church or synagogue to um, finding a meetup group that you're interested in, to actually, yes, this is physical, going hiking. Um, there are or doing something political, social political, volunteering. There are so many avenues to meet people. And I think the hardest thing may be to that effort of getting out and going out and joining up with some activity that you are interested in, and giving yourself maybe permission to say, I'm trying this out. It's not necessarily the right match, but I feel interested, so I'm going to try this out. And if it doesn't feel right, there's another something you can try out.
What would you say first drew you to explore the challenges that people face in their relationships, whether it be a friendship or a relationship, and especially for older adults?
Well, part of it has to do probably with my own aging and feeling, aware that friend, I need friends. But I also, I think, was very hit when COVID came along, and this, needing to be isolated was like a social and political situation which we all faced. But some people had partners, or some people had families where they could just hang out. And yes, it was maybe a bit too much. You were with the same people 24/7. But many older people are actually alone in their apartments or their houses. And I was like, oh my God, this is really terrible. And so I initiated a group online, which started within a couple of months of COVID starting, and provided support to people once a week. People got together to talk about whatever was on their mind, how they were feeling lonely, how they were going to go out and have a medical appointment, how, yes, a family member was coming to visit and how excited they were, how they were getting food in their homes. People just shared feelings and shared sometimes resources as well. So that was a really important, um, I guess, reflection on the times in a sense. And as I'm talking, I'm just remembering that perhaps there was a link to an earlier work experience that I had, where there was an organization called Supportive Older Women Network. The organization still exists, and they were providing once a week support groups to older women who were homebound.
Mm-hmm.
And I facilitated those groups, and perhaps I never even thought of that, but I, there's probably a link between that work that I did maybe 20 years ago and this work.
And speaking of COVID, I feel, at least personally, that the social muscle became
Mm,
atrophied
yeah.
when I was not able to, in a sense, be out and about connecting with people as I would like to have been for that length of time for COVID. So I feel, years later at this point, that I'm still having to work that social muscle a little bit more to gain my experience back in that area. So I
Mm.
imagine other people would be feeling that same way.
I certainly agree, and I actually think my mind is going not to older people so much as younger people in this
Mm-hmm.
instance, that who didn't even for 4 years have the opportunity to interact with their peers. I mean, I think it was and continues to be a devastating experience. And yes, this idea of atrophy, if you're having to be at home alone most of the week, it definitely has a negative impact on those social muscles, your ability to engage with other people. You kind of go in instead of being your relaxed, natural social self.
Hmm.
So, reconnecting with others or reconnecting, yeah, to that concept of being a social being, um, takes some work and getting over maybe some fears that may have set in
Yeah,
over that time. Like, do I know how to, talk, laugh, and be with people? Or maybe I've gotten too used to being alone.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back to a little earlier in our conversation, we were talking about how, like, as we age, our friendships can look different, going from active playing to more conversational, or in a sense, just being together. I'd be curious to hear if you have anything more to say about, like, some of those big shifts in how we relate to friends as we age.
Well, one of the thoughts I had this morning, in preparation for this conversation, was I see older people going in one of two directions. Either they become more kind of in, like, isolated and not wanting to communicate, kind of a little hardened perhaps and shut down, or somehow, due to various circumstances, they have really integrated their lives, their losses, their pleasures, their joys, their sadnesses. By the time you're 60, 70, and 80 years old, you've had a lot of different experiences. And you can either become kind of shut down and not want to share, or you can, as I use the word, integrate. You've integrated all of this into who you are and are comfortable with who you've evolved into being, and are open to sharing, revealing some, um, and just talking, and also taking in and being available to others. And those qualities of being available to others are really helpful in forming new friendships, because people love to be listened to, actually.
And what I'm thinking of, that is so interesting. And I have found, like, in my own life, it's like making a choice where, like, everybody has to deal with challenging things, and we have to
Right,
figure out a way to work through them.
right.
I have to make a choice. Am I going to let this defeat me, or am
Mhm.
I going to overcome and learn from this? And it's not easy all the time to be a resilient person. And I could see, by the time someone gets to what we call later life, being really downtrodden by
Mhm.
all of the difficult things that happen to them, or feel resilient. So that, I mean, that's just really resonating to me. And I've seen both situations with people in my life,
Y-
100%.
yes, it, it really, I love your word resilient, because there is something about that, like resilience, like, so you've lost your husband or your wife, or maybe even a child,
Mm.
which is a very hard thing for people to experience. And you can kind of just go in and be very sad for yourself, and or angry, and therefore rather unpleasant for other people to be around you. Or you can, somehow process those losses and feel the sadness, but not, um, have them on your sleeve all the time, and be open to your own joy and other people's joy or happiness. And that is kind of like an upward spiral of relating and living, where you can, yes, you have lost things, you have sadness, but you also see hear the birds singing in the morning. You take a little walk and you feel the sunshine on your skin, and you just feel grateful to being alive, and you can share that with other people.
And I love what you said about an upward spiral. I have never heard upward spiral before, but I've only heard downward spiral. But thinking of an upward spiral where you're building upon instead of breaking down. That's what's coming up for
Yes,
me.
yes, that's what I meant. Yes, you're building, and it's kind of like every time something positive happens, it gives energy for something else positive to happen. So sort of building your own ego, you might say, your own sense of self-worth and well-being.
And we were talking about that, you know, a life transition, like loss.
Yes,
Also, a very big life transition is retirement and losing
for
someone we're
sure.
close with or retiring from a career where, I mean, there is socialization built into working, and
Absolutely.
it's going to change our social life, our social circles. And do you have any experience with helping people through those transitions, or how you think those type of transitions could put some strain on a person?
Well, I agree. I think retirement is actually a very, very difficult transition, to use that word, a very, very difficult life experience that we both acknowledge and perhaps don't acknowledge. And I don't think societally we really grapple with it or help people. Um, the best examples I see of people who have retired is people who've gotten very involved in social activities, social slash political activities, and who are, some of them, busier than they ever were when they were working. They're so involved in environmental causes, political causes, social causes. I'm impressed myself. Since I'm still working, I don't do as much volunteering, but these people that I'm thinking of just blow my mind with how engaged they are, and they seem really happy and have lots and lots of relationships because of their activities. So, like, they make friends because they are doing things out there in the world.
Hmm.
So to me, that's the way to go. Like, definitely not stay at home and putter about your house. you know, get out there and do something, whether it's reading to, getting involved in some sort of mentoring program with a little kid who's having a hard time reading, or, as I said, environmental work. The world has lots of needs, and just, it's, I think, more a matter of finding what gives you joy, what gives you a sense of purpose and value, is the kind of what should lead you into whatever you decide to do.
And I have a belief that individuals who are retired really feed that volunteer engine, because
Yes,
whether you're retiring from a career or you have adult children who are moving out of the home, you have so much experience to share with the world. And
yes,
how lucky for organizations to have you as a volunteer in whatever capacity you're able to give. So, I mean, I hope that in my retirement years, I'm able to be a volunteer. And I've always been passionate about older adults. I'll be an older adult, so hopefully I'll be able to give back in that way.
I imagine you will, Cheryl. Yes. In the past, there was, in Philadelphia anyway, an organization called Retired Senior Volunteer Corps. I don't know if it still exists, but many, many years ago, I actually had their help making a newsletter for an organization I worked for. But there are countless volunteer activities, um, hospitals, churches, as I said, environmental groups, There also used to be an organization that was helping people find volunteer activities, but I can't remember the name right now. Maybe I can follow up with you if you would want it. And I don't know if it exists either any longer, but even without that, I would say figure out what you like to do
Hmm.
and then go for it. Reach out.
And I'll do some research too, and
Okay,
I'm sure I'll be able to find some links, and I'll put them in the show notes for anyone who's
great.
listening or watching who'd be interested.
Excellent.
Now, a question I feel that comes up is that there's the you're feeling lonely, and then there's people that like being alone.
Yes.
And so I'm curious how you might define the difference between, I suppose it would be like loneliness and isolation compared to solitude, which somebody just
Mm,
enjoys being with themselves.
right. Well, solitude is a beautiful word, I think, and a beautiful concept. I think there's a really significant difference between a person who enjoys solitude and a person who's alone and feels lonely. Because solitude is somehow more chosen, and I see it as a way of kind of going inward, reflecting, maybe doing an activity at home where you're really focused, whether it's like woodworking or needlepoint, painting, even cooking. I think often it means like it, doing something, but you're doing it kind of almost like with a little cloak around you where you feel nestled into yourself and you feel
Wow.
happy and content. Whereas the other experience of feeling lonely is like you are alone. Both in both cases you are alone. But one you're happy and you've made a choice, you're content. And the others you're kind of, you could say, rattling around in your house or inside of yourself, and you're like feeling like, oh my God, I feel so lonely. I feel so alone. And depression can develop, more anxiety can develop, self-criticism can evolve because you're like, why isn't anyone calling me? Aren't I worthy? Like all sorts of negative thoughts can evolve with feeling lonely. So it's a very scary, actually very devastating kind of experience, very worrisome for in terms of mental health. And so I think for that, any kind of social activity, any, go to church and hang out with people after services, talk. Um, it's a really, really almost like tragic experience. And the trouble is when you're feeling lonely, it's very hard to go from that that experience to the reaching out, to joining. And basically you have to force, I would say you have to force yourself. You have to say, I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling unhappy. I'm feeling lonely. And I am the only person who can do something about this. I mean, maybe my daughter has said, Mom, go out, go do something. But it's up to each person individually to take care of themselves and to, find their keys, get in their car, go somewhere, connect with other people. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of emotional work to do that when you're feeling down. And yet it is, I think, kind of the breaking edge of whether you are going to feel better or whether you're going to stay stuck in feeling sad and lonely. So I
So
want to
for
encourage everyone who's listening who feels lonely to do something positive for yourself. You know, go out and do something, even if it's taking a walk and talking to someone who's walking their dog. Making a little contact. We need contact. That's part of how we human beings thrive, is through social contact.
Would you prefer to age independently in your own home or live in a nursing facility? I know what I'd rather do. Friends Life Care membership offers just that. Plan today for a future lived at home with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience while protecting your savings. Learn about your options at a free seminar or webinar. Register at friendslifecare.org/register or call 215-628-8964. Welcome back to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, where today I'm joined by Claudia Apfelbaum to explore friendship as we age. And it may have to be, as you're saying, like bit by bit. You take
Yes.
that first step. You're like, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to try to have a connection with someone. Because
Yes.
it can be tough to be the first one to try to strike up a conversation or say hello, be that friendly face,
Hmm.
because I think we're all a bit afraid of rejection. So,
Absolutely.
so I'm just curious for someone who is, feeling like, oh my gosh, that's resonating with me. I really need to put myself out there. Do you have any advice for like taking that step to be the first one to start a conversation?
Yes, I have a little advice or suggestion. I would say before you go out, you might actually write a little list of qualities you like about yourself, things you've done in your life that you feel good about, um, positive memories from your childhood, anything to kind of frame who you are in a good way, in a positive way,
Mhm.
and remind yourself of your worth rather than going out with the weight of your loneliness or your self-criticism kind of sitting on top of you, like trying to contradict that that weight, because what we give off energetically is received by other people. So the more we can kind of like shift our own selves, the more people will receive us in a positive way. It's hard work. It's not easy, but I think it's doable. And it might help if you have even a family member, to say, I'm going to go to church. I'm a little nervous. Um, can we check in afterwards? How it
Mm.
went? I think having a little social support, and I know we're talking about people who are very isolated, but most people have someone, even if it's your medical doctor, your PCP, you could set up an appointment and say to that person, I'm struggling with isolation. I'm going, and they'll probably say, well, what are you going to do about it? Or here's something you can do about it. And then maybe you can set up another appointment and say, well, I did go to this church and it was like this, good or bad. I mean, obviously, a PCP is not the a therapist, but they can provide some emotional support for our lives.
I think those are great places to start. And also, your message about having an accountability partner.
Mm,
I think that can work in a lot of different areas in life that we're trying to personally improve. And
yes.
that could be so many different areas. And this could be one of them, trying to be more socially connected, trying to build some friendship. So I love that suggestion.
I like your word, accountability partner. That is actually what I'm talking about without having used that phrase. I think it is invaluable to have an accountability partner
Mhm.
for our goals. Someone who's aware of where we are, where we're trying to go, and who we can check in with and say, I've taken this step. It was like this for me, and then get some hopefully positive feedback. Just, yay, you did it. You took that step. We really need support.
And at some point in like our friendship and building our relationships journey, we're going to get to a point where I think we need to start flexing our vulnerability muscle where to really become close with another person, at least
Yes,
in my what I've experienced, we have to let someone in, and we also have to be accepting of another person like disclosing some aspects of themselves or their
right.
life that are going to be vulnerable for them to tell you, and that is what can make a deeper relationship from, again, my experience.
I
What
completely agree
thoughts
with you, Cheryl.
Yeah, well, what thoughts might you have about, that vulnerability component of friendship?
Um, I think it's scary, can be scary for people to be vulnerable, to reveal truth about themselves, their lives. And I think that doing so, as you said, usually deepens the connection. It brings other people to be more comfortable sharing and being vulnerable themselves. So it's a beautiful, complex dance, you could say, between two people and slowly trusting each other more with their personal truth. And sometimes an interpersonal uh, difficulty actually can arise and needs to be talked through, which again creates hopefully a closer friendship. It can also cause people to distance themselves, but if there's care and this is caringly communicated, it can actually bring people to feel closer to each other. I think I was saying a little bit earlier, kind of like a sense of personal integration. Like we have all gone through hard things in our lives, and the more we feel comfortable with ourselves, the more comfortable or the the greater ease we will have in being vulnerable and not being terrified of revealing something and falling apart. So yes, I think the more we can integrate our experiences by talking about them, writing about them, maybe drawing about them, we need to ourselves work through hard things, and you could say befriend ourselves as we age, because life is not easy. All kinds of unexpected things happen, and you can either feel awful about how your life has gone, or
Mm.
you can feel good. You can feel awful and disappointed. I'd say that's another important word.
Mhm.
Or you can feel, well, am disappointed about this, but I still overall feel good about who I am and how I've lived. And hopefully by reflecting, you find good things and good threads and feel relaxed about who you are.
I love your notes about befriending ourself
Mm,
as well as integrating our experiences, because myself reflecting what I find I do if I'm in a group or meeting a new person, I try to navigate to, okay, where's our common ground and start there. Like, what are some things we have in common? So,
mm.
okay, we can connect over them. Maybe we're both parents, or we live in the same area, or we work in aging services, and then use that in a sense as a building block to get
Mhm.
to like maybe deeper conversation. Or maybe that's a person who I'll be friendly with, but maybe they won't be my next best friend, and that's okay too.
Yes. But yes, I agree that the common denominators are the starting point for any friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess that's why I've mentioned church. I'm not even a person who goes to church, but I feel like maybe it's the concept of going to a place where you share something as a starting point. And as we age, we have less common starting points. We no longer have children at home, which is a very common starting point. We don't have our jobs where well, in the old days, you used to relate to people at work. Many people are not even going to physical work any longer, so that's a challenge. Um, but those two arenas, the family and the world of work, were places where people connected, where they met and connected, and there was a social dynamic to both of those worlds. And as you're older, you don't have the children to talk about. You may have children to talk about, but not in the same way.
Hmm.
And you're no longer at work, so you're not meeting people just casually by being colleagues. So it is actually a much harder time to meet people. And that goes back to what I was saying, like you got to, first you need to think about what do I like to do? Where, so if I like to do this, where can I do that with other people? Like I
Hmm.
know someone who loves to paint, draw, life drawing, figure drawing, life drawing, and he's taking a class, a once a week class. He meets people, he talks with people, maybe a friendship's going to develop there, but it's a very important part of his life. It's a thread that's been there. And my mother was the same. She loved drawing, and she'd take classes in her older age as well as in her younger years. Um, there's singing. I mean, they're just, the wonderful thing is there are so many exciting and beautiful things to do in this world. It's really like, well, what do you enjoy? What are you interested in? What are you curious about? What would you like to learn more about? And I'm sure there'll be a group somewhere or a class or an activity somewhere that will correlate.
So we've identified at least two ways to start finding out where you might be able to make some connections. One, find some common ground with the people in your network, wherever they might be, your
Yes,
neighbor, someone you're going to church with, so on and so forth. And identifying or connecting with what brings you joy, what are you interested in, and then see where you could integrate in a group that's doing that
right,
activity. And a
right,
third that I'm thinking of is there are people in our lives who we at one point had a connection or had a friendship with.
right.
And
Yes.
for whatever reason, we've lost touch. So I'm thinking of like losing touch with old friends
Hmm.
and perhaps coming up with ways to reach out to them to see if now, later in life, it will be later in life, regardless of your age, um, how we can start fostering a connection with those people. Might you think
A
that would be an
reconnection.
avenue? A reconnection. Yes.
Yes, yes. Oh, I think that is valuable because you have that foundation. Like maybe you went to high school together and then you went to separate colleges and you moved to far away and lived in, different parts of the country, but you have a little nice memory of this person. And you have not enough friends locally or something. So it's a matter basically of reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm I'm available. Are you available? Are you interested? I'd like to reconnect with you."
Hmm.
And it does involve some vulnerability because who knows how they feel now about you or where they're at in their lives and whether they want to form a new friend or renewed friendship. So it does involve some vulnerability, but I would say it's worth it, to try. Worth it to try. And I would say trying is one of the things, maybe it's a thread of this conversation, like go out and go to a new place. That's trying something. Reaching out is again trying to expand your circle. I'm sure you've heard, Cheryl, but I definitely know of someone who found her high school sweetheart, and she was widowed, and they got married.
Hmm.
I mean, so there is, like, you could say, hope in the world, hope for trying. And you can't
Absolutely.
know for sure because life is unpredictable and people are unpredictable. But reaching out, And it is sometimes maybe you have to use, the internet to find someone, Facebook, some of these modern
Mm-hmm.
methods of tracking someone down. But I would say overall, people are happy to receive an invitation for reconnection. They're probably looking for that themselves over the other end without your
Yeah,
knowing it.
it's flattering for someone
Yeah,
to reach out and want to connect with you.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good word. Flattering. Oh, I remember how, when we were in high school, we both took English together, and you were so smart. I loved your comments or whatever, like approaching it like that from a positive perspective will stroke a nice beginning.
I love that. Yes, a great entry into, a possible reconnection.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Now, you've given tons and tons of advice for someone who's feeling lonely, isolated, that their social circle has shrunk. Is there anything more on that topic that you feel compelled to share about what are ways to start or expand building our social network? Yeah, what's coming up for me is put yourself out there.
Yes.
Try to find ways that you have been successful in the past with making friends.
Yes.
Find a group. Jot down 5 things that make you wonderful so that you can
Yes.
build your own ego.
Yes.
Find common ground. Is there anything else that in your groups or in your one-on-one therapy that you have suggested that people try when they're on their journey to build new friendships?
Well, it's related to what I've already said, but I would say in simple words, find a way to love yourself, because that is kind of the beginning of positive connections to the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And another, which I don't think have talked about that much, is a skill, an interpersonal skill, which is to develop your skills as a listener. I think we talked a little, but to say a little bit more about that, um, I would say people are hungry to be listened to. And we have a tendency as to uh, jump in, offer opinions, offer advice, offer our own story. And that often isn't what people are looking for. They often just want to be heard for their own experience, their own particular experience, life experience. So I would say that adding to the skill of listening, just tuning in and listening, would be this other skill called paraphrasing, which is when you listen to someone and you give them feedback by saying, kind of like, this is what I've heard you say, and summarizing what you've heard in a few short sentences with both the content and a little bit the emotion of what they've said. And that kind of understanding, when you give that back to someone, is just like such a deep feeling of like, oh, I've been heard, I have been understood, and really enriches the connection, and it allows the person who's spoken to feel heard and and heard and held in a way, emotionally held. And then you can do that back and forth with each other and give each other space and support to talk about important things that are on your mind.
Something else I love about paraphrasing and the paraphrasing with emotion is it gives the opportunity for the person you're talking with to correct your understanding of what they've said,
Yeah.
because maybe there was something that you heard differently than they spoke it, or they want to build upon that idea to expand upon what they really meant, and then
Yes.
that really allows you as the listener, like, oh, now I get it. I
Yes,
understand what you're saying and where you're coming from.
exactly. That element of tuning in, you could say, to the emotional component and then checking whether you've heard it right, or yeah, you can ask the person who is speaking, did I get it? And they might fine tune it, they might add a piece, but there's a sense they will be receiving the sense that you're really interested in what they're saying, what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a little bit of love language going back and forth between the two of you. So I feel it's a gift of friendship, a gift of relationship, to use those skills of listening and paraphrasing and then inquiring whether what you've said, how you've paraphrased it, meshes with what they've said and how they feel. It's a gift.
Might you have any examples of an older adult who you've either worked with one or in one of your groups who has been successful in developing their friendships?
It's a good question. It's actually it is actually hard for people to change. And yet there is one person who comes to mind. He's a man in his very late 60s. And his description of himself is that he has mostly been a very quiet listener all of his life. So his effort and his goal is to be more vulnerable and share more about himself when he is with other people, whether it's over dinner or taking a walk. And he's feeling like he's being more successful, and he's excited and pleased about that.
How wonderful that he's been received. And that is a long time to feel like you've had something to say and
Right.
instead been the quiet listener.
Yes.
So it must feel like maybe even an opening or a reinvention for this person. I don't even know him and I feel excited for him.
Oh,
100%.
that's so
I
wonderful.
do. How nice.
Yes, I feel very excited for him too, and very excited. Yes, I felt when I heard that recently, like, oh, great. Yes, this is the what should be happening. And I would say that in the group that I run, a once a week group, um, people are having a chance to every week kind of talk about their successes and their continuing challenges with making friends. So it's a supportive place. I would say the people in the group feel very, very comfortable in the group talking about themselves and their lives and their challenges and their happinesses. Um, so it's a good environment with which to feel they feel held, they feel supported, and that is a place where from which they can embark on outside connections.
We've touched a bit on this group that we're referencing.
Yes.
Can you share with the listeners more about this group that you
Sure.
host
Yes.
to get a better understanding, because it's really an exciting thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I love doing it myself. Well, it's a once a week group composed of people over 65, more like 70 to 80, 85. And it's actually in person, but I'm thinking about doing another one online because not everyone can drive over here. And but it meets once a week for an hour and a half, and we talk about ourselves. I mean, I'm the facilitator. I don't talk so much about myself, but people get a chance to share about what's going on in their lives, what they're doing in terms of their efforts to form or develop friendships, receive some feedback about their communication a little in the group, and really feel supported and heard by each other in during the group hour and a half meeting. So it's a very cool place, if I say so myself.
And
Very
I mean,
supportive.
for me, it's an example that, yes, as you said, it is hard to change.
Right.
However, if you're feeling called to change at any age, 70s, 80s, that if you're feeling that something needs to change, something probably does need to change. And
I would
there are
agree.
people like you, Claudia, that are experts in helping people explore that. So if someone wants to learn more about you and the group and also your one-on-one therapy services, where can they learn more about it?
Well, I have a website. It may sound a little funny given how we've used the word listening so much, but it's called Claudia Listens
I think
dot
that's the
com.
perfect name. And
Yeah,
I will
thank you.
link, oh my gosh, I will link your website again in the show notes so people can learn more about you.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
I
it.
do I do have one last question.
Sure.
Either something that we've talked about that you want to leave listeners with, or something that we haven't perhaps discovered during this call. Is there a piece of your wisdom or perspective about friendship in later life that you wish more people understood?
Mm. Well, I'll start with saying that hope people come away from this conversation feeling a little more hopeful about forming friendships in older age. I know personally that it's possible, and I really hope that has come through to whoever's listening. And I feel friendship is just so, so, so important, or social connections. There's this whole um, world is what comes to my mind. The blue communities in about 5 to 7 places in the world. And one of the reasons where people live to over 100 and it's normal, and part of what makes that lifestyle or that age, that length of age possible is the fact that people do have lots of social interaction. Some of it may be simply with their mailman or their grocer, but having social connection is fundamental to a good older age. I think I'd like to leave to stop at this with that message.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Talking with you now and before has helped encourage me to build some new friendships and
Oh,
strengthen existing ones. And I'm just so grateful to have met you and learned from you, Claudia.
thank you so much. It's been a delight to talk with you, Cheryl.
Thank you for listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a unique program focused on aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience. You can find links and show notes from this episode on our website at friendslifecare.org/podcast. Thank you to Claudia Apfelbaum for joining us today. You can learn more about Claudia and her therapeutic services at claudialistens.com and LinkedIn. If you like our show, please rate, review, subscribe, and join us next time. To learn more about aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience, subscribe to our blog at friendslifecare.org/blog.